Fog pressed low over the harbor the morning we buried my husband. In Camden, the weather doesn't arrive. It decides. It came down like a hush, flattening sound, polishing every surface with a thin, cold breath. The pastor said the right words. My sons said the right words. I said nothing at all. That was when my phone lit up in my coat pocket. Unknown. I'm alive. Don't go home. I didn't gasp, didn't drop the phone. I slid it deeper like a live coal and watched the first shovelful of earth strike wood. Hollow, final, too clean. If you had been beside me, you might have said I looked composed. I wasn't. I was counting, not prayers. Seconds. 6 between each thud, 6 to build a little raft of breath, 6 to keep from breaking in front of the men who thought a ceremony could finish a marriage. My older son Adam leaned in. Mom, we'll handle everything. He meant the casket, the papers, the calls. He meant control. My younger son Luke kept checking his watch like the hour might sprint away from him if he didn't supervise it. Behind them, Sable, perfect hair, no smudge, dabbed dry eyes with a dark tissue meant to look serious. Evelyn, the pastor whispered, if you'd like a moment. I'll have it later, I said. At home. Don't go home, the message had said. I went anyway. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I drove a yellow school bus in Knox County for 32 years, up routes where winter lives and spring negotiates. My husband Thomas fixed watches at the hardware store counter on Elm. If you've ever wanted to know what time looks like when it gets tired of being invisible, you've seen that counter. The store still sells screws from real drawers that smell like oil and sawdust and patience. Our house is a white square with blue trim and a porch that hands you the harbor for free. We never moved fast. We moved steady, paid things off, cooked at home. One good winter coat every decade. People like us think we are safe because we are small targets. People like us forget that predators like easy puzzles. Adam met me at the porch. He'd beaten me there. Keys I never gave him opened my front door. Mom, he said, the tone you use with a child or an elderly neighbor. Probate wants Dad's signature on a few things he forgot. We can handle them in your name. Just routine. Forgot? I asked and tasted the word. It felt like lint. Luke held a blue folder like a man trying to sell me my own rug. The shop's a mess, he said. We'll clean, list it this week, make it painless. Don't go home. I need tea, I said. Then signatures. In the kitchen, the small watch Thomas had been repairing sat on a saucer by the window. He'd left the back off, tiny gears waiting like teeth for the jaw to close. A note in his hand. Tuesday. Finish for Mrs. K. Tuesday. The day he collapsed at the shop. The day the ambulance came and the story began sprinting without me in it. My phone buzzed again. Unknown. If they offer papers, say yes. Take them to the library. I typed under the table, who is this? Where are you? No bubbles, no reply. Mom? Adam leaned on the doorframe like the house owed him a pose. If we hustle, we can get the funeral home refund for the, viewing change. Viewing changed because the doctor said so, Luke added too quickly. No open casket, he said, for you, for me. Grief makes people polite, then clumsy, then honest. I poured water over a tea bag and watched their reflections wobble in the kettle chrome. Somewhere between polite and clumsy, Adam checked his phone and smiled. What's funny? I asked. A client thing, he said. Crypto's up. That was the first truth I heard all week. Thomas used to say, don't lend what can go to zero, but advice is a coat most people refuse until winter. Let's sign at the library, I said. Both heads snapped toward me. The library? Luke offered a soft laugh. Mom, we can notarize anywhere. We'll do it there, I said. Ruth's working. She'll have her stamp. Ruth Mendel has been stamping Camdenders legal and otherwise for 40 years. If time has a sheriff, it's a librarian. On the walk down, I counted like I did on the bus. Students then, seagulls now. Counting, tell you what's missing. And something was missing at the hardware store window when we passed it. The carbon monoxide detector, the little white square that chirped through last January until Thomas replaced the battery with a lecture about preventive care. The wall wore a clean rectangle where it had hung, wiped, recently. We'll come back for this, Adam said briskly. No point tugging at the old man's mess. Old man's mess. At the library desk, Ruth looked at me the way women look when a hurricane has just learned your street name. "Eve," she said, taking my hands across the counter. "I need your notary book," I whispered. "And your eyes." Adam set the folder down. "We appreciate your help, Miss Mendel. We just need to tidy Dad's affairs. Quick." "Quick is almost never tidy," Ruth said, opening the folder like a novel she'd already read in a different edition. "What are we signing?" "Assignment of business assets," Luke said. "Just inventory and accounts." "Show me," Ruth said. She read while I watched the tells. Throat swallow, sideways glance, tongue pushing against a cheek when a lie fits too well. Adam's jaw worked. Luke scratched a nothing itch inside his wrist. "This says you two are successor managers with full disposal power," Ruth said mildly, "and that Evelyn waives notice. Where's Thomas's signature?" "He signed a copy," Adam said, "with Doc Carlin as witness." "Doc Carlin lost his license in 2019, Ruth said, "and moved to Florida." Silence reached into the stacks and straightened the spines. "We brought a cleaner version," Luke tried. "We can note intention." "The law prefers ink to intention," Ruth said, sliding the folder closed with a polite finality that felt like a door easing against a latch. My phone buzzed. Unknown, ledger. Back wall, ask for notary log, March 14. "Ruth," I said, "do you have the log for March 14th? Adam's voice softened into a lullaby tone that comforted strangers and insulted mothers. "Mom, this isn't necessary." "Then it won't hurt," I said. Ruth pulled a blue ledger the size of a family Bible. March 14th, Thomas Brooks, signature obtained, watch receipt notarized for safe deposit key update. 4:12 p.m. below it, Adam Brooks, 4:27 p.m., safe deposit access, box 112, power of attorney on file. "Eve," Ruth asked, "did you file a power of attorney?" "No." Adam smiled in a way that asked the room to be dumber than it was. "Dad must have. Power of attorney requires the principal's signature, 2 witnesses and a notary," Ruth said. "It also requires telling your wife." A swallow of silence, the kind that tastes like metal. "Ruth," I said, "who's on harbor duty today?" "Officer Rios," she said, honest. My phone buzzed again. "Unknown. Do not sleep at the house. Ask Rios to pull the marina cam Monday night." I stepped into the staff room, locked the door, and typed, "If you're Thomas, name the first watch you ever fixed for me." Reply came fast, like a hand I recognized in the dark. "Unknown. Bulava." Blue face. "I scratched the back by accident and hid it under your pillow until I could afford to replace it." I sat down. He was alive, or someone had stolen a memory I'd never shared. Officer Mateo Rios met us at the harbor office with coffee he'd forgotten to drink. He read the ledger copy, filed my request, and didn't waste time arguing with grief. "We'll pull the Monday footage," he said. 7-day loop. You're inside it. Adam added a smile for the report. "Officer, our mom is grieving. She's confused." Rios didn't look at him. "Grief doesn't make a notary write what isn't true," he said, and slipped behind a door marked Authorized Personnel. Miss Caldwell at First Harbor Savings found the box 112 log, then brought a scan of a supposed power of attorney. Thomas's name in a hand I didn't recognize, a notary stamp off center, Carlin due beneath it, Florida. She locked the box and flagged access. "If anything goes missing, it won't be us," she said, clean as glass. Elm hardware smelled like oil, old wood, and the nickel tang of honest work. Mr. Hargreaves looked up with eyes that had witnessed more repairs than arguments. The counter remembered where Thomas's elbows leaned. The small drawers sang when I touched them. And the wall wore a blank square where the carbon monoxide detector should have been in, the faint tan line of safety removed. Hargreaves dug under the counter and handed me a yellow slip from Larkin Power and Gas. Service. Detectors inspect relocate. Friday. Paid cash. "Your boys started saying upgrades," he muttered. "Tom said upgrades is what you call it when something breaks on purpose." Sable floated in. Bone broth, clinic jacket, smile you could hang a coat on. She offered soup. I said I'd eat later. I asked what time she and Adam had reached the hospital Monday. She said Adam has emergency alerts. From whom? The display of locks became the most fascinating thing in Maine for Adam. Back at the harbor, the footage unspooled in greenish grayscale. The fuel dock, the lot, the hush of boats keeping still. At 11:46 p.m., Thomas's car slid into a space. A taller figure in a hood stepped out, rounded to the passenger side, and helped someone out. Unsteady, familiar coat, familiar tilt. Thomas guided down the dock toward private slips. At the floodlight, they became bright shapes and vanished into glare. No one returned before midnight. "Rental boathouses," Rios said. "Seasonal, some off the books. We've been herding them toward code." "Get the leases," I said. "Warrant," he said, already reaching for the phone. Ruth and I did what polite people do when they mean business. We called public offices. The Harbor Commission's clerk confirmed Unit 11, subleased by Penobscot Shore Services, LLC. Registered agent Sable Clement. Gate log, agent code at 11:46 p.m. Unit 11 keypad pinged. Ruth also checked the probate docket and found a guardianship petition already filed against me. Memory lapses, undue influence, erratic behavior, attached to a letter from a clinic doctor whose main license had been inactive since 2022. We were not sleeping at the house. That evening, 2 men in utility jackets knocked, claiming to be Larkin Power checking a leak. Doris, my neighbor, met them with the look of a Sunday school teacher who has already marked your quiz. She called the police. Later, a gas tech found a loosened line and tape that wasn't theirs. We packed a bag, watched our porch light, and went to Ruth's. At dawn, the harbor wore a thin gold rim like a good watch. Rios and Chief Talbot moved along the dock, quiet, patient. A black SUV idled in the far lot. Sable stepped out in flats, badge lifted at the east gate, tote on her arm. She went straight for the boathouses. Rios intercepted, Talbot flanked. She handed over the tote, syringes, 2 amber vials, a paper cup with a pharmacy label, clinic-branded chamomile, and a small white CO detector with its batteries loose. Unit 11 opened onto dark. Rios went in, Talbot close. Seconds stretched. Then his face reappeared in the doorway. Alive, unconscious, paramedics, procedure, the choreography of people who practice saving as if it were a language. They wheeled Thomas past the office, gray around the edges, stubble like frost, eyes blinking toward me like a man finding shore. My phone buzzed. Back room, tool chest, second drawer. Rios had sent it. Adam got out of the SUV and saw the stretcher, then me. His face forgot how to be composed. "What did you do?" he said, as if I'd broken a household rule. "Called a librarian," I said, "and a cop." In the office, the tool chest stuck a little. Thomas never wasted oil on sliders, and then eased. The second drawer held oddments, a manila envelope with my name, and the backplate of a Belova with protective film still on. Inside the envelope, a letter dated Friday. "If time runs ahead of me, it won't outrun you. The boys are pressing. Sable is organizing. If I go quiet, check Unit 11. Tell Ruth I sign nothing without her stamp." A cash receipt for Unit 11 prepaid. A duplicate Larkin ticket annotated by Thomas. "Boys want upgrades. Don't like this." And etched along the Belova's rim, the private creed he used to tell me was nonsense until it was a map. Time tells on us. In the ER hallway, Dr. Patel spoke cleanly. Benzodiazepines and Z-hypnotics, compliance doses, no ethanol, no narcotics, dehydrated, malnourished, but no organ failure. "We'll detox slowly," she said, "and we'll run tox labs you might not think to ask for." Rios posted an officer at the door. I pressed my palm to Thomas's and felt the faint squeeze of a watch, remembering its tick. Ruth walked with me to the harbor office like a person escorting a small invisible animal, fragile, stubborn, endangered. Librarians know when questions steal time and when silence saves it. Officer Rios returned with Chief Talbot, who signed the request for footage like a man who knows paper has muscles. "We'll pull 10 to midnight," he said. "You view at 3. If anything feels wrong before then, call us. No heroics." "I'm fresh out," I said. Outside, Adam's patience thinned. "What are you looking for, Mom?" "The truth," I said, "and that's not a plan. It's better than yours." We went to First Harbor Savings. Miss Caldwell had her glass box and a binder of safe deposit logs, the adult version of a homeroom attendance sheet. Box 112, she said, flipping. Last accessed Monday, 3:41 p.m. Agent Adam Brooks. Authority, power of attorney. On file. She looked up. Should we be worried? We already are, I said. She locked the box, flagged the account, and printed the scan. The off-center stamp, the Florida doctor. We'll cooperate fully, she said, and I'm sorry. At Elm Hardware, Mr. Hargreaves retrieved Thomas's repair log. Tuesday had 3 entries and an empty charge line for Mrs. K's Belova he was cleaning as a favor. He'd have charged her a cookie, Hargreaves muttered, then added, the alarm company sent a clipboard last week, or someone pretending to be one. I don't trust clipboards. People hide behind them. He dug out a carbon copy service slip. Larkin Power and Gas, he read. But that's not their handwriting. Sable arrived like a commercial. Clean, soft, collagen in a cup. Evelyn, you need protein, she said, offering me a styrofoam lid that smelled like chamomile disguised as virtue. I set it down. Later. I asked how she and Adam got to the hospital before me. We have alerts for emergencies, she repeated. Alerts from who? She smoothed her hair. Adam examined a rack of deadbolts with interest. Back at the harbor office, Rio scrubbed footage, paused, zoomed, made a copy. We'll need a warrant for the boathouse leaseholder, then for Unit 11, he said. Magistrates on duty. Ruth and I hit the public terminals at the library. The Harbor Commission site coughed up a list. Rental boathouses 418, seasonal. Sublease to Penobscot Shore Services, LLC, Rockland address. Agent Sable Clement. Ruth called the commission. Do you log gate codes, she asked. Do you log unit keypads? Yes. Monday night showed agent code at the east gate. Unit 11 keypad at 11:46 p.m. Thank you, she said, hanging up with the restraint of a woman who has heard worse. Probate, meanwhile, had scheduled a Thursday morning guardianship hearing. Basis: paranoia, undue influence, confabulation. Letter by a Dr. Corbett, whose license had gone to sleep in 2022 and never woken up. Ruth printed the registry page and slipped it under a paperclip with the notary ledger. Librarians don't juggle, they stage. Jury question: how many times does a lie change its name before it starts to sound like help? At my house, a patrol car idled. Doris stood guard on my porch with a casserole and the energy of a lighthouse wearing slippers. 2 men came, she said, saying a leak. I told them the only leaks here are my eyes and the town's mouth. I called the police. We didn't step inside until the gas tech signed the air with permission. Rios's jaw tightened at the report. Loosened line, non-standard tape, intent inconsistent with safety. We drove back to Ruth's in a silence that wasn't empty, just crowded with unspent words. At 3, the harbor office window framed procedure. Rios and Talbot moved along the dock. A black SUV idled in the lot. Sable arrived, flashed her agent code, and headed for the boathouses with a tote. Rios intercepted, Talbot flanked. The tote's inventory told a story the labels tried to hide. Syringes, amber vials, a pharmacy cup, tea, a CO detector whose teeth lay in the bottom, like they'd fallen out on purpose. Unit 11 opened. Dark, then breath, then a life you don't get back by accident. Paramedics poured into the rectangle of light. Thomas lifted his head like a man hearing his name underwater. They wheeled him past the office. The SUV door opened. Adam stepped out. A story ran out of alibis. Rios passed me Thomas's tool chest, the metal warm from his palm. Back, he said, for you. I opened the second drawer, Thomas's handwriting in a folded letter. The rental slip for Unit 11, paid cash, a duplicate Larkin ticket he'd annotated in the margin, and the Bulova backplate engraved. Time tells on us, like a dare to the future. At the hospital, Dr. Patel charted sedation, without alcohol, without narcotics. Rios assigned an officer. Ruth assigned me a chair and a coffee. Thomas's fingers found mine and squeezed, the small insistence of a clock spring. Paper breathes on its own. You just have to open the window. Back at the library, Ruth divided the work like she was shelving a storm. You take business records, she said. I'll take court. On the public terminal, I pulled harbor business licenses and seasonal leaseholds. The page smelled like dust and salt in my head. Storage sheds, kayak lockers, rental boathouses, units 418, sublease to Penobscot Shore Services, LLC, agent Sable Clement, address, Rockland, the tidy kind of lie that counts on people not to count. Ruth called the Harbor Commission's clerk again. Unit 11, she said. Who holds the subkey? The agent keeps duplicates. Do you keep video? Pause. Of course you don't. She hung up, penciled the answers, and pressed her lips into a line that could cut rope. My phone rang. Rios. Magistrate signed, he said. We're rolling to the marina in 20. If you want to wait at the office, do. But don't be on the dock when we cut locks. Understood, I said. Before we left, the clerk at probate called back. Ruth took the handset, listened, thanked her, and came back with the look librarians wear for bad news that arrived on time. Temporary guardianship petition is set for Thursday at 9, she said, and they attached Dr. Corbett's letter. Signature matches a man whose license expired 2 years ago. We'll bring that to court, I said. Today we go to the dock. At the harbor office window, procedure unfolded like origami. Rios and Talbot advanced along the catwalk. Sable appeared from the lot, badge to the gate, tote on her arm. Rios intercepted. Talbot opened the tote. Syringes, vials, a pharmacy cup, tea, a mute detector with its teeth in the bag. They keyed into Unit 11. Dark. The flashlight beams cut a narrow corridor of dust. Then, Rios's hand at the doorway, thumb up, alive, unconscious. EMS rolled in a stretcher with a choreography that makes complicated things look simple. Because simple is the only thing that works. Thomas came out blinking, oxygen mask in place, gray around the edges like a man who'd argued with winter and been sent home with a warning. As they passed, he turned his face toward the window. The pause in his eyes said, I see you even when I can't say you. Go, Ruth said. I'll bring the paper. At the ambulance, the paramedic's voice was the clip of competence. You can ride up front. He's sedated, dehydrated. We'll watch vitals and draw labs. Is he? Trying, she said. He's been trying. As they loaded him, Adam stepped out of the SUV. He saw the stretcher, then me. The performance left his face like a bird startled from a branch. What did you do? He said. Called a librarian, I said, and a cop. Talbot's presence moved up beside me like a wall that had learned manners. Ma'am, he said. We'll need your statement after the hospital. Miss Clement is detained for controlled substances and tampering. We'll talk to your sons. Tampering? Adam repeated, too fast. Carbon monoxide detector, Talbot said. It went for a walk without its batteries. Rios jogged up and handed me a small tool chest. Second drawer, he said. He asked me to tell you. In the office, I opened it and found a letter that felt like Thomas leaning over my shoulder. If time runs ahead of me, it won't outrun you. The boys are pressing. Sable is organizing. If I go quiet, check Unit 11 by the fuel dock. Tell Ruth I signed nothing without her stamp. A photocopy of the Unit 11 rental receipt, the Larkin service ticket duplicate, and the Bulova backplate engraved. Time tells on us. Ruth arrived with a notary's calm and a general's plan. I told the clerk to hold the guardianship motion, she said. We'll walk in with exhibits. At the hospital intake, the nurse's competence made room for me. Observation, she said. Vitals stabilizing, labs pending. An officer took a seat in the hall and pretended not to be a guardian angel. Dr. Patel came in with charts and the kind of careful truth that lets you breathe. Benzodiazepines and Z-hypnotics, she said. Sedation pattern. No ethanol, no narcotics. We'll taper and monitor. Rios met me in the corridor. DA wants interviews this afternoon, he said. Sable first. He spoke to me like a person, not a witness. We'll pull your sons into rooms where the furniture doesn't lie. If Sable flips, she'll buy herself time with her truth. If Adam flips, he'll buy Luke a choice. The harbor camera and this USB backup, he held up Thomas's copy, are a spine. We're building a body around it. In interview 2, Sable sat very straight. A public defender by her elbow and a tote now logged in evidence. Talbot slid an inventory across the table. Syringes, vials, tea packet, detector. If this is caregiving, he said, the dictionary will need an edit. Her mouth twitched. Thomas is a friend, she said. He was detoxing, Ambien, Xanax. I was keeping him safe. Your clinic license doesn't cover benzodiazepines, Talbot said, and detectors are meant to detect. Rios stepped in. You can carry the men who hired you, or you can carry yourself. Choices wait. She stared down at her hands. Immaculate nails, immaculate lies. I want a deal, she said. Earn it, Rios replied. She did what people do when the room doesn't allow courage to hide. She named Adam. She described the retreat. She admitted bringing tea and pills and carrying a spare detector at Adam's request. She admitted they called my future restorative care. In interview 1, Adam sat with his elbows on the table like he had only just realized tables are honest. Rios offered him 2 futures, trial with Sable and Luke under a jury that liked widows and disliked tampered detectors, or cooperation, names, invoices, off-book services, who printed what and who signed where. Adam talked. He named a mobile notary, the clinic vendor, the Larkin employee who looked at wiring. He didn't look at me through the glass. He looked at the floor where choices go to learn their weight. Luke tried to outrun paper with speed and ran out of breath. It was Adam's idea, he said. Sable's thing, He counted resentments and came up short on reasons. By evening, the DA had a stack thick enough to blister a conscience. Warrants followed. Clinic, condo, SUV. Investigators found a ledger that wrote itself into a corner, a box of vial labels, a hardware receipt for a portable CO alarm tester, and text messages where euphemisms worked overtime until they broke. Miss Caldwell called to say the court authorized access to box 112 with a police witness. Inside, our certificates, deed, bonds, and an envelope labeled IF, Thomas's note, a USB copy of harbor footage, and a name and number written in his careful hand. M. Rios, Harbor Patrol. Honest. I laughed once, the sound you make when the world almost keeps a promise. That night, Ruth and I sat on her couch with the yellow pad and the blue ledger and a thermos of coffee that could climb stairs. Tomorrow, she said, probate, then DA, then whatever's left. And Thomas, I asked? Thomas breathes, she said, and time keeps talking. Hospitals learn your storms before you do. By morning, the monitors in Thomas's room were blinking in a polite rhythm, the kind machines use when they're confident but not cocky. An officer sat in a chair angled to see both door and window, reading emails with a face that didn't react to anything except the word reply. Ruth stood near the sill, sunlight folding across her legal pad like a bookmark. 9 a.m., she said. Probate with Judge Fallon. They'll push the guardianship like a shopping cart with a squeaky wheel. We'll bring a can of oil and the receipt. Receipt, I asked. The registry printout showing Dr. Corbett's license is sleeping, she said. Plus the notary ledger, the bank scan, the harbor stills, and your kitchen's almost gas-turned headline report. Officer Rios appeared in the doorway. Dark hair damp like a man who had showered off other people's intentions. Miss Clement is in holding, he said, businesslike. Counsel on the way. The DA's drafting, tampering, unlawful practice, conspiracy. We'll see what the lab sings. Luke turned south to Rockland last night. State police tagged his plate and invited him to stop. Adam is cooperative adjacent. Cooperative adjacent, Ruth said. Making lists when asked, Rios replied. Not volunteering poetry. I stood over Thomas the way the living stand over the loved when we're trying to be brave without making it anyone else's job. We have court, I told him softly. We'll do the paper you didn't sign. He looked at me with that slow, careful attention of people not yet allowed to spend their energy. Eve, he whispered. One syllable, the longest word in the world. You rest, I said. I'll sign the heir on your behalf. Ruth slid me a folder tabbed to within an inch of its life. We'll stop at your house first, she said. You should change, but we go in and out with a patrol. A cruiser rolled behind us to the porch. Doris met us with a thermos and a scowl. I sat on the steps like a gargoyle, she said. No boys tried the door. A raccoon did. He failed. Inside, the sweet metallic edge that had haunted the kitchen last night was gone. Every detector blinked like a choir. Doris had taped a list to the fridge in bubble letters. Batteries, March, June, Sept, Swash, G, Swash, Deck. Under it, a smaller note. If you die, I'll kill you. D. I laughed hard enough to tilt, then changed into the black dress Ruth ironed while I pretended not to notice. At the library, we set the reference desk like a courtroom nobody could move. Carafe of coffee, blue ledger open to March, the bank scan showing Carlin Doe, Ruth's notary stamp, and a spare pen for anyone who wanted to play. At 8:58, Adam walked in wearing a suit that thought better of him than he did. A man in a lab coat followed, shoes creaking with newness. He shook my hand with practiced sorrow. "Dr. Corbett," he said, "so sorry for your loss. Grief can cloud essentially everything. We're here to help." "Your license is inactive," Ruth said, handing him a printout from the state registry. "Might be contagious." He blinked and recovered. "An administrative lapse, easily rectified." "There are many words for untrue," Ruth said, "and that's a popular one." Adam set a folder down, found his inside voice. "Mom, let's just sign. It's temporary guardianship, standard till the estate is settled." Ruth flipped to the first page and read aloud as if the stacks had demanded a performance. Petitioner attests that respondent exhibits paranoia, undue influence, confabulation after bereavement, requests complete financial and medical control, and exclusive possession of the residence. "Standard?" I asked Adam. "Language," he said. "It's how they do it." "Who is they?" Ruth asked. "And are they licensed today?" The library doors opened again. Officer Rios and Chief Talbot entered with the easy, unhurried authority of men who did not come to argue. Two plainclothes detectives flanked the stacks like friendly bookends. "Dr. Corbett," Rios said, "you're under arrest for practicing without a license, fraud, and filing a false medical statement. Mr. Brooks, step aside while we execute a search warrant on those documents." "Wait," Adam began. "Warrants don't wait," Talbot said gently, and put the cuffs on Corbett like he'd done the practice version during training and now had the live show. Ruth slid the ledger forward. "Initial here," she told Rios, "for the copies you'll take." She turned to Adam with an almost kind tilt to her head. "You initial here, please, next to the pages you wanted me to stamp without smelling." Adam stared at the line. For a flicker of seconds, relief crossed his face, the sort born when a lie finally stops requiring its owner to feed it. "What happens now?" he asked Rios, voice diminished. "Now you call your lawyer," Rios said. "Then you talk to the DA. Then you decide if you want to get ahead of your brother or behind him." We walked the 3 blocks to the courthouse as a small parade no one wanted to lead. A librarian, a widow, a cop with a folder, a son with a suit that didn't fit his crimes. Judge Fallon runs a punctual room. She took the bench at 9 on the dot and surveyed us like a teacher who didn't need a roster to recognize trouble. "Temporary guardianship in re Evelyn Brooks," the clerk called. Ruth stepped to the lectern. "If librarians ever choose not to run the world, it is only out of respect for the quiet." "Your Honor," she said, "the petition relies on a false medical letter by an inactive physician, a forged power of attorney, and an intent to remove Miss Brooks from her property while criminal tampering is under investigation." Rios placed the harbor stills, bank scan, registry printout, and ledger on the evidence table and stood back with the patience of a man who trusts paper to finish the paragraph. Judge Fallon read. Judges read the way surgeons cut, decisively with a private map only they can see. When she looked up, the room straightened. "Petition denied," she said. "Sanctions reserved. Dr. Corbett is remanded. Mr. Brooks, surrender your travel documents. Miss Brooks retains full rights. Protective stay ordered on any transfer or encumbrance of her property or accounts." Her gavel landed like a bellbuoy in my ribs. Outside, Adam tried to match my pace for 3 steps, then stopped like he'd reached the edge of a map. "Mom," he said, voice younger than his tie, "I didn't think it would go this far." "It always goes this far," I said. "You just can't see that from the start line." Rios's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, nodded. "State police have Luke at a traffic stop," he told us. 2 phones, a burner in the glove box, and a shoebox of cash that looks like someone's last time. I promise. "Is he—" I began, and didn't know how to end the sentence. "He's breathing," Rios said, "and blaming." Back at the hospital, Thomas was awake in that light, fragile way people are when they have wrestled sleep and won a few inches. He tracked me, then Ruth, then the officer, then back to me like a compass relieved to settle. "We won a morning," I told him. "They tried a guardianship. The judge said no." He blinked twice, deliberate. Approval with the volume turned down. Rio stood at the foot of the bed. "Mr. Brooks," he said gently, "when you're stronger, we'll need your statement. For now, your wife and a librarian saved your life." Thomas's mouth shaped something like a smile. His hand found mine. It wasn't a grip, it was an agreement. We left him with Ruth's choice of book, a slim novel with a lighthouse on the cover and sentences that knew when to whisper. "Read to him," she told the nurse. "Bodies like stories. They learn the way back." The rest of the day was less dramatic and more important. Paperwork that is secretly justice, coffee that is secretly strength, waiting that is not secret at all. Rios' team executed search warrants. Sable's clinic yielded a supply order that outpaced her license. Adam's condo produced a tablet with neatly named files, a thumb drive labeled POA, and a trash folder that didn't delete as completely as he'd hoped. Luke's SUV offered up a receipt for a portable CO alarm tester and a photo roll full of messages where euphemisms finally wheezed and died under the weight of their intentions. By late afternoon, the DA wanted everyone in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and fresh verdicts. She sat with posture and a tired smile. "Here's the shape," she said. "Miss Clement faces felony tampering, unlawful practice, accessory exposure on the attempted homicide of Miss Brooks. Luke, conspiracy, obstruction. Possible accessory depending on his knowledge of the gas tampering. Adam, conspiracy, fraud, tampering, and attempted homicide on the gas." She paused. "We can try this loud, or we can plea this fast. Either way, the record is our north." "I want a record that doesn't lie," I said, "loud or fast." "Then we'll build both," she said. When we left, I passed interview 1 through the observation glass. Adam sat alone with a bottle of water he hadn't opened, staring at his hands as if they might confess before he did. He looked up, felt me looking, and flinched like a child who found the one honest adult in the room. "Mom," he said when we were face to face, "I'm sorry. I didn't give him the weather I didn't have." "I know," I said, "and I know what you did anyway." "If I talk," he asked, "will you—" "Forgive you," I said. "Forgiveness is weather. You don't get to schedule it. Today I want truth, that you can control." He nodded, and for once, he didn't promise. He just said, "Okay." By evening, Ruth and I were back at her kitchen table, the blue ledger beside the yellow pad, the cat walking the line between the two like a referee. We made a list of tomorrows that look like scaffolding, evidence logs, witness prep, hospital rounds, bank affidavit, harbor cam chain of custody, probate sanctions, somewhere in there. Soup for Doris, because kindness is an argument you win by cooking. Overnight, Camden slept like a place that thinks it is not famous. In Ruth's guest room, under a quilt that had survived 3 decades of winters, I woke once to the cat using my ribs as stepping stones. In the light between sleep and morning, I had the thought that carried me through the next day. Truth is a long chore done well. Morning came like a judge, clear, unsentimental, checking whether you did your homework. Ruth handed me coffee and a stack of folded questions with yellow flags, like bookmarks in a storm. "They'll try to blur edges," she said. "We keep them sharp." At the hospital, Thomas looked stronger around the edges, the way a chalk line darkens when you retrace it. Dr. Patel reviewed labs like a conductor warming an orchestra. "Sedatives tapering," she said. "Electrolytes improving. We'll ask him for a few simple anchors. Nothing strenuous." Rios arrived with a notebook and a voice set to careful. "Mr. Brooks, do you remember Monday night?" Thomas closed his eyes briefly, as if lifting a memory from a shallow drawer. "Car," he whispered. "Not mine." He pinched his fingers together. "Salt, metal." "The dock," I said. He nodded. "Water and you." He looked at me with the fragile smile of someone recognizing his own house from the street after a long trip. "Tea," he added. "Didn't drink." Rios paused, pen midair. "You refused something they brought?" Thomas nodded once. "Wrong suite." That's enough, Dr. Patel said gently. Let the lungs and liver finish their argument. We left him with a lighthouse novel and a room that finally smelled like hospital instead of harm. At the station, the day arranged itself into rectangles with glass on one side. Sable, in interview 2, hands folded, lipstick removed, looking at the table as if it offered absolution. Adam in 1, elbows at 15 degrees, sentence fragments queuing behind his teeth. Luke farther down, tapping a rhythm on the plastic chair like he believed noise could outrun paper. A deputy removed the chair. Start with Miss Clement, the DA said. Her deal clock is ticking. Talbot opened with a list that was part inventory, part sermon. Gate log, keypad log, tote contents, clinic supply order, counterfeit CO detector, in a bag with the batteries removed as if they'd bite. If this is care, he said, you'll need to find a new word. Sable sat very straight. Thomas is a friend, she said. He was detoxing, Ambien, Xanax. I was keeping him safe. Your license doesn't cover benzodiazepines, Talbot replied. And we have invoices for Z drugs you shouldn't own. Also, there's the small matter of a boathouse used like a bed without a nurse. Rios joined with a voice devoid of decoration. You can carry the men who hired you, or you can carry yourself. Deals have weight limits. Something inside her calculation finally stepped aside to let survival through. Adam called it a retreat, she said. He said Evelyn was unstable. He wanted Thomas somewhere quiet to taper. He offered cash. I said no at first, then not no. How much? Talbot asked. 10 up front, she said. 10 after. And the detector? Rios asked. He brought me one and asked me to take it, she said. Said the shops kept chirping. I told him batteries are cheaper. He laughed. Next day he asked for our spare because ours don't chirp. I tossed one in the tote. What was the plan for Miss Brooks? The DA asked. Guardianship, Sable said. Then a restorative stay I was supposed to arrange. Different facility. Same idea. Phones, Talbot said. Where are yours? In evidence, she said. The one with my text to Adam and the clinic vendor. The other one, the number he gave me for a discreet. Rios didn't nod in approval. He wrote down timestamps as if the clock were a witness who needed encouragement. Adam's turn was less theater and more arithmetic. Rios laid out 2 simple futures and pushed the paper across the table. Version 1, ride with Sable and Luke to trial. Meet a jury that likes widows and hates tampered detectors. Version 2, talk now, reduce harm, and help us charge the pieces you didn't think were crimes. Adam looked at his hands. When he spoke, it was a confession trying to pass for a report. The boathouse was Sable's, he said. I called it our retreat, because I knew Mom would never call it what it was. Luke knew about the money. The detector, he exhaled. I asked a guy at Larkin to inspect. He owed me a favor. He thought it was a one-off. It wasn't. Name, Rios said. He gave it, and more. The mobile notary's pop-up desk, rented for a day at a co-working space, Sable's LLC paid cash to use. The clinic vendor who sold out the back door, the crypto transfers labeled design retainer, and equipment calibration, because adjectives think they can fool ledgers. Why? Rios asked finally. Not as a cop, as a man who'd seen enough whys to recognize when one mattered. Adam swallowed. Debt, he said. I told myself Dad had insurance for Mom. I told myself we were just accelerating what was meant. I told myself Mom would be better off in a place. I told myself a lot. Rios didn't comfort him. He didn't need comfort. He needed a chair and paper and the chance to avoid learning how cold the judicial system can make a room. Luke started with aggression and ended with gravity. I didn't touch the detector, he said. I didn't text the doc. I just... He flailed for an exonerating verb. It didn't show up to work. I needed money. I hated the way Dad looked through me, like he saw the porch instead of my condo, like the shop was a church and I hadn't been baptized. Who suggested the boathouse? The DA asked. Adam, Luke said. Sable had the code. Who suggested the guardianship? Adam, he said again, then glanced toward the glass like he wanted a different brother. Sable said it would be easy with a letter. And Mom? I asked softly from behind the glass that makes you a ghost. Luke flinched. It was a wellness stay, he said. Words matter. They do, Ruth murmured beside me. Just not the way he thinks. By noon, The DA's whiteboard looked like a map of a storm. Names, arrows, dates, receipts. A case is a sweater. You pull one thread and the sleeve runs off the arm. Pull two threads and the torso falls. By 2 o'clock, the sweater was a pile of yarn with labels on the skeins. Miss Caldwell called again with bankerly joy. The court authorized Miss Brooks to access box 112 with a police witness, she said. We'll meet you with keys and copies. We walked to the bank like people carrying invisible porcelain. Inside the vault, the past hummed. The metal box slid forward with a sound like forgiveness arriving late but intact. Inside, tidy strata. Birth certificates, our marriage license with the pastor's name I can never remember but always like. The house deed. Treasury bonds that look like a patient future, and the envelope labeled "If" in Thomas's square hand. I opened it. 3 things. A letter that read, "If I cannot outrun what's coming, you will. The boys are not who we think." The shop's detector went quiet after they visited. I booked Unit 11 in cash as a place to think. If I go missing, it's because I'm not allowed to be found. Ask Ruth for the ledger. Ask Hargreaves for the ticket. Ask Time for the rest. A USB stick labeled Harbor Cam. Backup, because Thomas did not trust 7-day loops more than he trusted his own habit of making copies. And a folded scrap with a name and number. M. Rios, Harbor Patrol, honest. I handed the USB to Rios. He recruited you before I did. Rios half smiled. Honesty leaves a wake, he said. Your husband could read water. The DA gathered us in the late afternoon for the part that looks like TV and feels like paperwork. Here's what a plea might look like, she said, drawing boxes as if building birdhouses. Sable, cooperation for reduced time, no medical practice ever again. Adam, full confession, testimony against the notary and the Larkin employee, restitution to his mother, and a structured sentence. Luke, fewer years for stopping now instead of later. What about a trial, I asked. I'd like the town to hear itself. You'll get your day, she said. Today we set the table for it. On the way out, I paused at interview 1. Adam was still there, now with a legal pad full of his own handwriting. He saw me, stood and swallowed a dozen apologies he could no longer afford to spend. If I tell everything, he said, can I change what you did? I said. No, but you can change what happens next to other people. That's worth something. He nodded. I'll take that, he said. I can carry that. Ruth and I walked back to the library at that hour when Camden glows as if someone turned the harbor up a notch. The bellboy called the hour without caring who heard. On the second floor, we unlocked the old conference room with the windows that frame mast tops. Ruth flicked on the light. Tomorrow, she said, looking at the chipped paint and the table that had borne 1,000 elbows. This becomes a room. A room? I asked, smiling despite my bones. For truth, she said. Because librarians are allowed to say the thing out loud when everyone else has switched to euphemisms. Don't sign in the dark, I laughed. We'll need a sign. I'll make one, she said, and a smaller plaque. Time tells on us. At home, my home, the porch light was on, a patrol car idling at the curb like a dog who'd learned to sit. Doris had left a casserole under a towel and a note on the door in aggressive cursive. I replaced your batteries. Every chirp is a hymn. If someone wants you a headline, they can go to the newspaper office and ask permission. D. Inside, the house smelled like onions and safety. I set a slip of paper on the counter and wrote Thomas a note on the back of a grocery list, because paper is paper when it matters. We bought tomorrow today. Sleep. I'll see you at sunup. E. That night, I slept in my own bed with every detector blinking like a polite metronome. Somewhere near midnight, I woke and listened. Not for creaks that didn't belong, not for cars that idled too long, but for the little house noises that had returned now that fear had been asked to leave. The refrigerator sighed. The clock ticked. The harbor breathed through the open window like a parent checking on a child. Morning would bring courtrooms and microphones and the look of men who had run out of synonyms. It would bring a jury box and a watch backplate engraved like a hymn. It would bring a town that believed it knew us and would have to learn again. For now, the night kept watch, and for the first time in weeks, I let it. Courtrooms have their own weather. Ours broke clear the morning of arraignments. No fog, a clean blue sky stretched tight as a drum over Camden Harbor, the bell buoy ticking like a metronome instead of a warning. The courthouse steps felt steeper than usual. People came early and sat quiet, the way towns do when the news has already chosen its chair. Ruth buttoned my sleeve like a sister and checked the folder as if a missing paperclip could alter the tide. "Artifacts, not adjectives," she said. "We brought the world it needs to see." The clerk called it State of Maine versus Adam Brooks, Luke Brooks, and Sable Clement. The DA stood with the posture of a person who has slept against the grammar of proof. "Your Honor," she said, "we proceed today on multiple counts: conspiracy to defraud, criminal tampering, unlawful practice of medicine, and attempted homicide in the matter of Miss Evelyn Brooks." She nodded toward me once, not for theater, but to mark the point on the map. Defense counsel rose in their turn. Sable's lawyer wore a voice lacquered in concern, like tone could extubate facts. Adams had a quiet cadence, designed to make regret look like restitution. Luke spoke fast enough to outrun his own shoes. The DA called Officer Mateo Rios first. He took the oath as if it were a tool he used daily, then spoke like tide charts. Simple. Exact. Harbor Gate logs, 11:46 p.m. Agent code entered at the East Gate. Unit 11 keypad pinged at 11 hours, 46 minutes, and 22 seconds. The boathouse door. Key cylinder unscratched. Lock sheath intact. No pry marks. Entry by code, not force. The tote. Syringes, amber vials, a paper cup with a pharmacy label, a clinic-branded tea packet, and a CO detector with the batteries resting in the bottom, like teeth that had declined to bite. "Detective," the DA asked, and no one corrected the promotion. "How did you identify the boathouse?" "Public records cross-referenced with the library's notary ledger," Rios said, "confirmed by harbor access codes and the lease to Penobscot Shore Services agent Clement." "Who was found inside Unit 11, the DA asked. "Thomas Brooks," he said, "alive, sedated, dehydrated." Defense tried to fog the edges. "Detective, cameras can be altered." "Detective, my client's tote isn't illegal. Tea is not contraband." Rios didn't sigh. He didn't need to. "Footage was pulled from 2 independent sources," he said. "The harbor system and the USB backup we recovered from Mr. Brooks's safe deposit box. They match minute for minute, and tea is not contraband. Tea mixed with Z drugs can be." Chief Talbot followed. Chain of custody, clinic supply invoices, the off-book portable alarm tester receipt tucked in Luke's glove box. He spoke about pattern, not plot, because good cops let the nouns do the lifting. Then Miss Caldwell from First Harbor Savings, in a blazer the exact blue of trustworthy paper. She authenticated the scan of the forged power of attorney and pointed to the workstation ID rented by Sable's LLC for a pop-up mobile notary. "We placed a hold," she said, "and notified law enforcement. Miss Brooks retains full control." Mr. Hargreaves from Elm Hardware shuffled up with the repair log and the Larkin ticket duplicate Thomas had copied. "I keep slips," he said. "People get fancy with upgrades when they ought to change a battery. Tom said upgrades is what you call it when something breaks on purpose." Ruth took the stand last in the foundation chain, set the blue ledger down like a gavel, and opened to March 14th as if turning a page could move weather. "On that date," she said, "I notarized Thomas Brooks for a watch receipt linked to an update on his safe deposit key, 4:12 p.m. at 4:27 p.m. Adam Brooks signed as his agent on box 112 with a power of attorney on file. No such instrument exists. Not with me, not with the bank, not with the law." "Miss Mendel," Luke's lawyer tried, "you're a librarian." "I am," Ruth said, "which means I can find what's real faster than most." Light laughter rose, then stopped when Judge Fallon lifted an eyebrow with the efficiency of a stop sign. A forensic toxicologist testified that Thomas's blood showed benzodiazepines and Z-hypnotics in compliance dosages, tolerable, not recreational, no ethanol, no opiates. "This is a sedation protocol," she said, "not an accidental overdose." They wheeled Thomas in after lunch, a nurse behind him with the dignity of a bridge. He looked smaller than he ever had in a court, which is to say, exactly the size of a person. He raised his right hand without trembling. "Mr. Brooks," the DA said gently, "do you recall who asked about your carbon monoxide detector?" "Adam," he said, voice scratchy but steady. "Said it chirped. I told him change the battery." He laughed. "Do you recall agreeing to a retreat at a boathouse?" "I recall being told I looked tired," he said, "which is true. The rest wasn't." "Did you want to die?" she asked. "No," he said, and found me in the benches like a man spotting his own front porch from the street. "I wanted to find Eve." "Why didn't you call for help?" "They took my phone," he said, "and gave me sleep." The DA held up the tool chest drawer in a clear bag and the Belova backplate in another. "These were recovered from the harbor office," she said. "Mr. Brooks." "Second drawer," he said. "We keep our next steps where we'll remember them." When it was my turn, I told it plain. The text at the cemetery. The blank square on the shop wall where Safety used to live. The library, the bank, the harbor, the boathouse, the envelope labeled "if," the backplate engraved. Time tells on us. The defense tried to herd me into adjectives. I stayed with nouns. "Mrs. Brooks," Sable's lawyer asked, "do you dislike my client?" "I don't know your client," I said. "I know what she carried in a tote bag." "Mrs. Brooks," Adam's lawyer said, "grief can distort." "Paper doesn't grieve," I answered. "It just reads." By mid-afternoon, the state rested. The judge allowed a 15-minute recess that gave the whole town time to stretch and the press time to text. Out on the steps, gulls worked the wind like they'd paid for it. When we resumed, Sable's counsel leaned toward the mic. "Miss Clement will make a proffer," he said. "Deals are ugly tools. They build staircases." She spoke without makeup on her voice. "I arranged Unit 11, she said. "Adam called it a retreat. He brought pills and a tea packet he said a clinic doctor recommended. I carried a spare detector per his request. I did not touch the shop's device. I knew Evelyn would be moved after guardianship. I told myself it was care." "What was the money?" the DA asked. 10,000 in an envelope, she said. 10 more after. There is no after." "Did you know about the gas line at Miss Brooks's house?" the DA asked. "No," she said. "I thought tea was the plan." "Tea is rarely a plan," Judge Fallon observed dryly, and no one laughed. Then Adam took the stand. His counsel rested a hand on his shoulder like training wheels he wouldn't get to keep. Full cooperation, the DA reminded the record. He named the mobile notary and the co-working space day rental. He described the Larkin employee who inspected what didn't need inspecting and the cash, a stack that moves like a bad decision. He did not look at me because he knew eye contact is a currency, and he was in arrears. "Why?" the DA asked. He stopped, then restarted. "I wanted to not be the son who fixed things with his hands. I wanted to be the son who fixed things with plans. I wanted money I hadn't earned. I wanted my mother safe, I told myself. I wanted a lot of words to mean something better than they did." "Did you intend to kill your mother?" the DA asked. His throat worked. "I intended to move her out of the way," he said, "which is the same coat, different weather." Luke went last for the defense. He tried swagger and it fell off somewhere between the oath and the chair. "I didn't touch the detector," he said. "I didn't tell Sable what tea to bring. I didn't write the letter about guardianship. I half believed it. I resented." He let the words sit like a drunk at noon. "I was angry that the porch mattered more than my condo, angry that Dad valued a watch spring more than my startup deck. I told myself we were modernizing." "Modernizing?" the DA repeated, not needing more than the echo. "It sounded better than stealing," he said, and there finally was a truth that stayed put. Closing arguments came fast and clean. The DA framed exhibits in sentences that didn't waste verbs: harbor footage, notary ledger, bank scan, clinic invoice, tote contents, detector with its teeth missing, Larkin ticket, and the engraved backplate. "You don't have to like anyone in this room," she told the jury. "Just believe the paper." Defense tried to hang their coats on intent and grief. They meant care. They were scared. They were desperate. Hooks broke. Intent without action is a diary. Action without intent is a hurricane. Here we had both. The jury retired and the clock in the courtroom discovered enthusiasm. I didn't pray for speed. Time had been on our side all along. I asked it to keep its job. They came back before the hour hand got to be self-important. The foreperson stood and read with the measured voice of someone who understands the weight in her mouth. On the charges of conspiracy to defraud and criminal tampering, she said, we find Sable Clement guilty. On the charge of unlawful practice of medicine, guilty. On the charge of attempted homicide against Evelyn Brooks, guilty as an accessory. Sable closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were human and late. On the charges of conspiracy to defraud and criminal tampering, the foreperson continued, we find Adam Brooks guilty. On the charge of attempted homicide against Evelyn Brooks, guilty. Adam didn't move like a man crushed. He moved like a man who finally let the wave pick him up and stop the fight. On the charges of conspiracy to defraud and obstruction, she read, we find Luke Brooks guilty. On the greater charge of attempted homicide, not guilty. A rustle moved through the room, not triumph, not outrage. A recognition. Law is a scalpel, not a net. Sentencing a week later required more paper, more reports, more numbers that pretend to be neutral. Sable, 12 years in state prison, eligibility at 8 for cooperation fully rendered, permanent prohibition from medical practice, mandatory ethics program that would try to make a rib cage for empathy. Adam, 15 years on conspiracy and tampering, 10 consecutive on attempted homicide, with parole eligibility conditioned on full restitution, continued cooperation against the notary and the Larkin employee, and completion of a financial crimes program that teaches math with mirrors. Luke, 7 years on conspiracy and obstruction, mandatory treatment, gambling prohibition and community service hours that would bring him face to face with every porch he'd sneered at. When Judge Fallon's gavel fell, it sounded like a buoy in January. Solid, necessary, nobody's favorite song. Justice isn't a parade. It's a ledger that finally adds up after someone reconciles every stray cent. On the steps, people hugged the way small towns hug, quick, fierce, casseroles promised. Doris cried into my shoulder but still managed to offer gum. Muscle memory is a kind of hope. Miss Caldwell shook my hand for exactly as long as bankers do when something profoundly human has just happened. Chief Talbot talked to a reporter who wanted adjectives. He provided nouns. And Rios leaned against the balustrade with the relaxation of a man who trusts paperwork more than microphones. Detective, I said. Mrs. Brooks, he said, smiling like the rank had found him at last. You were the first good witness, he added, and I shook my head. I was the wife, I said. That too, he said, and that was the whole sermon. We chose what came next. The old conference room on the library's second floor, the one with windows that see mast-tops, was cleaned, painted the color of clean pages, and given 2 tables, one for legal aid hours, one for document check clinics. On the wall, we hung a framed print that says, "Don't sign in the dark," in letters big enough to be read by someone who doesn't think signs are for them. Under it, a small brass plate. Time tells on us. We called it the Harbor Room because names are either useful or decoration. We planned to be the first. On Wednesdays, Thomas comes with a small bag of screws and a loop on a string. He teaches people how to hold something tiny without breaking it. Ruth opens the blue ledger and smiles only when the truth shows up on paper. I pour coffee and ask the most dangerous question I know. What's the hurry? People sit down and their stories either sway and fall or plant their feet and stand. We count the legs on each tail. If it stands, we help it walk. If it falls, we make sure it doesn't take the teller with it. Rios drops by with interns who still believe in forms. He brings donuts and the kind of caution you can learn without getting hurt if someone tells you how. Miss Caldwell brings cookies and a banker's angle for corners. Mr. Hargreaves pretends he's lost and then fixes our office door hinge no one asked him to fix. This is how towns hold. Sometimes a woman I don't know sits down, slides over a temporary guardianship petition already pre-filled by a relative who cannot spell temporary, and whispers, "They say I'm confused." Ruth asks, "What day is it?" The woman answers correctly, and we proceed to the next question. Who benefits if you sign? The room answers faster than she can. Sometimes a man brings in a letterhead and a stamp and a clipboard and is surprised to find all 3 are available at any party store in the county. We show him the state registry, the notary database, and the rule of thumb. If the pen arrives before the story, it's a trap. The Bulova went back to Mrs. K with a receipt and a grin Thomas had to practice for weeks to make fit his face again. He brought me the backplate he'd engraved for himself, Time Tells for Us, and asked me to hold it a minute longer than it takes to read. Some objects are a blessing when you commit to them. At home, there are new detectors blinking politely and old photos that no longer feel like traps. On the fridge, lock the back door. Under it. Leave the light on for yourself. On a post-it by the phone, ask their last name twice. We are not suspicious people. We are precise. Now, Adam writes from prison. The first letters were apologies that knelt too quickly to be useful. The later ones are inventory. Dates, names, invoices. Who bought the stamp, who rang up the notary desk, the phone numbers they called when they wanted a shortcut. He does not ask me for forgiveness anymore. He tells the truth because he learned it's the only payments the future accepts. I write back sometimes. I tell him about weather, soup, and a room where we stop other people from doing what he did. I tell him the porch is still the boss of the sunset. Luke sits in a group circle 3 towns over, naming his wants the names they deserved all along. He sends me the picture of a paper wristband and a spider plant he remembered to water. I tape it to the fridge next to the detector checklist. Hope needs a place to live that isn't a diary. Sable appealed and lost. Through counsel, she sent a message. I opened the door. I didn't answer. Doors don't need answers. Hinges do. Spring came late, and then all at once, like it does when Maine decides it's done punishing you. We held a book sale on the library lawn. Children bought stories with quarters. Grown-ups bought cookbooks with ambitions they would forgive themselves for later. Rios and Talbot grilled hot dogs. Apparently, Law has a recipe card. Doris ran the bake table with a glare that dared you to underpay. Someone brought lemonade strong enough to refinish furniture. At noon, Ruth clinked a mug with a spoon and gathered everyone with librarian magic. Friends, she said, we dedicate the harbor room today to plain paper and the people who read it. To Evelyn and Thomas, who taught us love is a contract the good kind doesn't require a lawyer to recognize. And to Time, which, she looked at me, does exactly what she says. Everyone looked at me like I'd brought weather. I held up the little Bulova. It ticked the way truth ticks when you stop shushing it. Time tells on us, I said, but it also tells for us if we listen. That evening, Thomas and I walked the pier. The bellboy counted the hour without showing off. Gulls argued about bread with the sincerity of congressmen. Thomas leaned on the rail with 2 hands like he always did and not like he had to, and watched me with that sideways affection men keep for rare things. You were brave, he said. I was stubborn, I said. Same coat, he said. Different weather. We went home slow. On the porch, I set a saucer by the window and placed the finished watch on it, back on, heart ticking. I wrote a note on the back of a bakery bag because paper doesn't need ceremony to count. We didn't burn truth. We labeled it and shelved it. And when it slipped off the shelf, we picked it up again. See you in the morning. E. Inside, the house breathed like a sentence that knew where it was going. Outside, the harbor kept count. Between them, the night finally remembered how to keep watch. The harbor still rings its bell at dusk, but it doesn't sound like fear anymore. It sounds like a reminder. Upstairs at the Camden Library, a small room waits with its lamp on. The sign above the table says, "Don't sign in the dark." We call it the harbor room. On Wednesdays, Thomas brings a handful of tiny screws and a steady loop. Ruth opens the blue ledger and smiles at the truth when it shows up on paper. I pour coffee and we listen to people who are told to hurry. We slow them down. We count the legs on every story. If it stands, it stands. If it doesn't, we let it fall, gently but honestly. If someone in your life hands you a pen with a practiced smile, pause. Read the line above the line they want you to sign. Ask a librarian, ask a banker, ask a cop who still believes in forms. And if all else fails, ask time. It has a way of telling on us, and for us. I'm the voice behind Grandma's Gavel. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for more true-hearted life tales. In the comments, tell me, What's one document you're glad you didn't sign in a hurry? And if you've got a friend who needs a light left on, share this with them. The watch on our windowsill is ticking again. The house is quiet. The harbor keeps count. We'll see you in the next story. Same bell, new weather.